There are moments in true crime that defy explanation, moments that force us to confront the quiet cruelty of indifference. In the peaceful suburbs of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where porch lights glow and children ride their bikes down the same streets their parents did, something happened that shattered the illusion of safety forever. On August 12, 2016, 37-year-old Khalid Jabara, a Lebanese-American man known for his kindness and humor, was shot dead on his own front porch. What made Khalid's story so chilling wasn't just the brutality of his death. It was how predictable it had become. He had warned them. He had begged for protection. And yet, in the final minutes of his life, the system that was meant to protect him turned away. Khalid lived with his mother, Haifa, in a modest home they cherished for decades. They were immigrants who believed in hard work, community, and the promise that America was a place where neighbors looked out for each other. But for years, the Jabara family had lived next door to a man who saw them not as neighbors, but as enemies. His name was Stanley Vernon Majors, a 61-year-old with a long history of anger, prejudice, and violence. To the Jabaras, he was a nightmare that never seemed to end. According to family records and police reports, Majors had harassed them for years, shouting racial slurs, vandalizing property, even running Haifa over with his car. The family got a restraining order. They called the police dozens of times. Each time, they hoped it would be enough. Each time, it wasn't. The night Khalid died began like so many others. Quiet, uneasy, full of tension. At around 7:30 p.m., Khalid called 911. His voice was calm but urgent. He told the dispatcher that his neighbor, Majors, had a gun and was threatening him. Officers arrived, checked the situation, and left. No immediate crime, they said. No reason to arrest him. 8 minutes later, Khalid was shot in the chest. On his own front steps, the sound of gunfire tore through the calm of East 61st Street. His family ran outside, screaming his name. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Khalid Jabara died just feet from his front door, the same door he had opened to police less than 10 minutes earlier. When detectives began piecing together the timeline, the inconsistencies were staggering. How could a man known to be violent, who had already injured a family member, still be living freely next door? Why had the protective order failed? Why had police left when Khalid said he was in danger? To the Jabara family, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a betrayal. They had done everything right. Reported, documented, obeyed the law. But the system that should have intervened simply didn't. Majors had a long criminal history. He'd even been out on bond for an assault case involving the same family. Yet he was allowed to return home to the house right beside theirs. To the Jabaras, that felt like living beside a loaded gun, waiting to go off. At first, the killing was treated like another neighborhood dispute gone too far. But then the deeper truth began to surface, and it was darker than anyone wanted to believe. Majors hadn't just disliked his neighbors. He hated them. He called them dirty Arabs, terrorists, and filthy Lebanese. His attacks were targeted, relentless, and fueled by prejudice. What happened on August 12th wasn't random. It was hate. Investigators found no sign of provocation, no altercation before the shots. Khalid had simply been outside when Majors decided to act. The motive was as senseless as it was clear. He wanted them gone. And the twist? Khalid had predicted his own death. Just weeks before the shooting, he told friends, "If something happens to me, it's because of my neighbor." As the investigation unfolded, the community of Tulsa was shaken. People who had never met Khalid marched with his family, demanding justice. His story struck a chord because it wasn't just about one man's death. It was about a pattern that had gone unchecked for too long. Hate crimes dismissed as disputes. Warnings ignored until it was too late. The irony was brutal. Khalid had trusted the system. He had called for help minutes before he was killed. That call, meant to save his life, became the timestamp of the system's failure. But in tragedy, sometimes truth finds its way through. When the case went to trial, prosecutors painted a clear picture. Majors' hatred had turned deadly. The evidence was undeniable. Years of threats, prior assaults, racist slurs, and the fatal bullet that ended a man's life on the same property line that should have separated peace from chaos. In 2017, Stanley Vernon Majors was convicted of first-degree murder and hate crime charges. The sentence: life in prison. The courtroom fell silent. Justice, at long last, had arrived, heavy, delayed, but real. For Khalid's family, the verdict brought both relief and sorrow. They had fought for years to be heard. Now the world was listening, but it came at the highest price. Today, the Jabara family's story stands as a testament and a warning. It reminds us how easily hate can grow when it's ignored, how prejudice whispered across a fence line can turn into tragedy when no one steps in. Khalid's name now echoes beyond Tulsa. His death helped inspire the Jabara-Heyer NO HATE Act, legislation aimed at improving hate crime reporting and accountability in the United States. It's a legacy of protection born from loss, a promise that what happened to Khalid should never happen again. In his final hours, Khalid believed help was on the way. He made the call. He waited, but no one stopped what was coming. And yet, in the years that followed, his voice, silenced by hate, became impossible to ignore. Because in the end, the truth wasn't buried with Khalid Jabara. It was buried in the paperwork, in the warnings unheeded, in the silence of those who could have done more. That's the story of the death of Khalid Jabara, a case that asks us, how many calls for help go unanswered? How many protective orders are ignored? And how many lives lost before the system intervenes? If you found this story as disturbing and imperative as we did, remember to like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because down here, in True Crime Odyssey, we keep shining a light so stories like this aren't forgotten. Because sometimes justice doesn't just roll in fast. Sometimes it's quiet, it's persistent, and it's overdue. Thank you for watching.